Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the NARPM Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Newbig, the voice of NARPM. And today we have my good buddy, Ben Serven, who's the founder and CEO of BlackSheep Global. Ben and his team have helped over 250 PM firms to stay accountable and foster a process-driven culture. His innovative approach frees up teams, enhances resident and owner satisfaction, and drives growth for your business by ensuring operational excellence and efficiency. And if you guys know me, I used to be called the Process King. If you can see the video, you actually see the Process King board behind me. I am now the Process Prince, and I've given my mantle to Ben, the Process King. Ben, welcome, buddy.
Thanks, Pete. Stoked to be here, man.
All right, let's get into it. I got this burning question I've been wanting to ask you. So,
All right, hit me.
All right, Ben. With softwares like Lead Simple and Apply, process automation continues to be a big topic. Unfortunately, some PMs purchase these softwares only to abandon them. In your experience, what is the difference between a company that is successful and one that is not successful when it comes to building out and automating their processes?
Such a great question, and there's like 10 million things to talk about here. So let's jump in. Okay, so I think a first key thing that we need to think about here is your belief system. Right, the way that we operate in the world all happens on the basis of what we believe. Right, what we believe about simple things like gravity, right, or whether taxes are going to go up or down. Right, they're going up. BS. And whether I'm going to get paid today or next week. There's lots of things that we just accept and we believe, and we plan our life on the basis of these things that we believe. Right, so it's very all-encompassing. And the reality of this is that most of the beliefs that we have, they just happen. Right, something in our life happens, and then we decide, oh, well, this thing is true, and so it's always true. It's true forever, right? And tons of this, and I'm not going to get like too woo-woo here, but there's like psychology that goes back to this. You look at like how you grow up and your family and your experience as a kid, and like, did you get bullied or not? Did you go to a summer camp or not? All this stuff, right? All these things play into who we are and what we think about. So here's what I want to come back to, because I know I'm going off on rabbit trails here, but belief is really, really important. And when we talk about processes and being successful with software, or truly, taking software away from the question at all and just saying being successful in building a business, what you believe is pretty much the number one indicator of how successful you will be or not. It's like, if you think about, well, am I going to succeed at this thing or not? Well, if you believe that you're not going to succeed, you're definitely not going to succeed. If you believe you will succeed, you have for sure a better shot at succeeding because you've told yourself that it's possible. So when we think about
there's an old saying, whether you believe you can do it or you can't, you're right.
Exactly, right? That is 100% true. And so often when we go to a software company, what we believe initially is this software company is going to solve my problem. Right? We hear a sales pitch, we see someone else who has a really great outcome, and then we believe, oh, this can happen for me too. And it's a good thing. Like, I want people to believe that, right? Because it is possible. But once we take that first step and we realize that I can't just believe, believing is only part of the battle, I actually have to do something, then it gets a lot less comfortable. Right? It's like you go to the gym and you see the guy who's super jacked, like, that guy's got great genetics. Well, that's not true, right? He had to start somewhere and believe that he could do it and then do the work in order to get the great outcome. So I guess this core idea, the core answer to your question, Pete, is that what we believe or our culture or our worldview is really what dictates how successful we are with software or business or anything. And what I found to be true in this world of property management and just business development in general is that the companies who have a process culture, right, a culture or a worldview that is obsessed with building systems, they're the ones that are the most successful.
So let's pause there. A lot to chew on. So I understand. Okay, so I have this belief that I'm going to buy Lead Simple or Apply, and I believe this software is going to be successful. Then I get back into the office, tell the team, they're all excited for a short period of time, and then we try to implement. We get punched in the face, and now it's hard, and then we stop because most likely because the belief wasn't strong enough for the action to solve the challenge. Does that sound about right? Am I paraphrasing?
That's about right.
Okay.
Have you ever thought about like the conviction that it takes to go out and start a business? Like you've started several businesses. I've started a few. I remember early on, like in some of my super early entrepreneurial endeavors. Actually, this I'm gonna go way back here. When I was like 7, I wanted to make some money. We lived out in the country, and there were not a lot of jobs for me to just go out and get at 7 years old. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sell something, and we didn't have eggs to sell. We had chickens, but we didn't have enough eggs to sell because we had 9 kids, eating all the eggs in the family. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna sell rock dust. I'm going to steal my dad's hammer from the garage, and I'm going to take these little, disintegrated granite chunks from our driveway, and I'm going to smash them, and I'm going to put it in a little bag and wind it up like a dime bag, which I had no idea at the time what these actually look like. But I had these little baggies of dust that I went and knocked on the neighbors' doors, and I sold them for 25 cents a piece. And God bless them. I think I had like 2 or 3 neighbors who actually paid me a quarter for a little bag of rock
Just for
dust.
the effort. Yeah.
It was for the effort, right? But I believed that I could do this. And as ridiculous as it was at some level successful because I did the work and I went out and I believed that I could sell it, and people very kindly went and bought. Maybe those were pity sales, but they were actual sales.
Got it. But even if I believe in it, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets hard, what 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 type of person or what type of company have you seen where when it gets hard, they don't quit? Versus like, is there like where you and I are integrators? So is it like
Mm-hmm.
because most people start businesses are visionaries. Is there anything about like, hey, is the type of personality? Is there anything about the buy-in of the company? Like, there's lots of layers here. So belief is the first piece of it,
Mm-hmm.
but again, if
Yeah, I
what
guess
other
I
what other pieces are there that you're seeing?
yeah, I think the next step is the conviction to keep doing it even when it's uncomfortable.
And how
Right? Belief gets you. Or go ahead.
I want to say it's okay. I'm with you on this. I believe that too.
Yeah,
Um, how do they, how do they get through that hard time? Is it just telling themselves like this is what it looks like when it's at the end result? Kind of like when you said the bodybuilder guy, right? Like if I eat
sure.
healthy and take steroids and go lift weights and I become that body, like if that like so is it just the belief that the end result is going to make the business and then you can add in all the adjectives there like
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to do it. There's you can stick with belief and just believe your way to doing it, and if you can pull that off, great, right? You're the exception.
okay.
For the rest of us, the reality of getting there requires more than belief, and it requires more than conviction and more than even discipline. I think what it requires is accountability. And I think this is where you have to think about, um, that whole adage of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think the discipline of accountability, and putting yourself in an uncomfortable position of having someone else who also believes but is pushing you, oftentimes someone who's not even a part of your business or a part of your immediate circle, someone who's just going to say, hey, you said that you were going to do this. Did you do it? I
Yeah,
think
I
that's what
mean,
actually
that's where I
pushes the
think
needle.
coaching becomes very, very important, right? When I wanted to lose a bunch of weight, I've literally hired, like a workout coach.
Yeah,
And I hired it. I knew I've been doing triathlon for 20 years. I know what to do. What do I hired him? Why?
yeah.
Accountability, right?
You need the accountability. Yeah, it's not for a lack of expertise. You've got all the expertise, right? Even I have tons of expertise in my particular area, but I still need a coach. I still need someone to help me apply what I know internally. There's still a requirement for accountability to cross the finish line.
Do you see companies that are led by a visionary be successful in creating processes? And if so, how so?
Yeah, great question. They get an integrator. They don't stay visionary led, right? Having a visionary is great. The visionary has that belief. The visionary gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you to start doing the thing. But having someone who's an integrator is what actually makes it continue to happen consistently. I was reading the Shoot Traction, the EOS book, recently, and it was citing a statistic that the ratio of integrators to visionaries is 1 to 4, meaning there's 4 times as many visionaries as there are integrators, which is kind of scary when you think about it, but it makes a lot of sense. If you think about all the businesses that start and fail and start and fail, there's so many visionaries who are pushing for, I just need to make it happen. And that's where you go back to that belief. And you need that. You've got to have the belief. But if all you have is belief and you don't have any discipline or accountability to get you across the finish line, it's not going to take you anywhere.
Ben, I've always been taught like the why has to be powerful enough, right? If you want to start a business, like what's the why? And they always say, well, it can't just be money, right? The money's a tool. And then so you got to keep asking yourself almost like seven
Sure.
times. Okay. You and I have done this numerous times as far as like building processes or all that stuff. It is not easy. It's not easy building processes, right? We know that there's lots of challenges there. Um, when do you see a bigger why with people who are successful versus somebody who doesn't maybe have a big as why to like what that why they're doing this and what they're trying to the end result looks like?
Interestingly, I would actually say no.
Interesting.
I would say while the why definitely matters, and the why gets you started, what actually causes you to cross the finish line is just the accountability and discipline. In fact, I've got some. I'm not gonna name drop here, but I've got some clients who I brought on a few years ago, and we helped them with a lead simple build out, and they took off and have just absolutely crushed it. And I was doing an interview with one of the leaders, and I was almost digging for great comments, be like, "Oh, Black Sheep is awesome. You guys are the best." All this stuff. And what he told me was almost a little bit frustrating, but it was so illuminating, because what he said to me is, you guys were just one step along the journey. We really just kept doing what we were doing to adhere to our plan, and so we succeeded because we just kept doing the next thing in the plan.
Mhm.
It wasn't really about the why so much as it was about execution. They just had to do the next thing, and it was the next thing relative to the plan that they had designed, which was running relative to their why, but
I
they just had
was
to
you
execute.
just hit I was going to say
They
the
just had to
plan is
execute.
the why though, right? Like if I'm
Yeah,
building a plan, the plan is to you know, have better customer service, reduce
sure.
churn, make less mistakes. So, um, I'm going to ask you a little bit of like what all the benefits are of having processes, and then I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you about your process culture. But before that, have you seen any correlation about team and team buy-in versus not buy-in, or the type of team for people who are successful or not successful in actually implementing the processes and the systems behind it?
Okay, so a couple of things here. I will say I have observed that the teams that have the hardest time are typically portfolio teams. So take that for what you will. I find that departmental teams or pods or hybrids are usually more successful with adopting technology and having a more process oriented culture. So take that for what you will.
I would
Um,
surmise a portfolio manager has
mhm,
they have their hands in everything, and
they
they're
do.
worried about giving stuff up, right? They don't trust as much.
It is a high control environment where there's a lot of freedom given to that individual to make a judgment call, and that's not a bad thing. Like portfolio businesses can be massively successful, but they are a lot harder to scale, and they're a lot harder to systematize because you have a bunch of basically free agents, 1099s, who don't have to adhere to a certain standard necessarily. So it's a lot harder for them to
Even if
often
they
be
are, even
successful.
if they are, employees, they tend to all do things just a little bit differently.
Yeah, yeah,
Like all my portfolio managers, when I was portfolio based, right? They had guidelines, but they did everything a little bit differently.
yep.
And then when we went departmental, we were able to streamline some stuff. So, okay, so if we could build a persona, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna kind of say, hey, okay, this is what I think is the perfect person to like get through this, and then you can kind of like add or subtract to it. So
All right.
if I'm an integrator or a visionary that has an integrator on staff, I have a big enough why. We have a coach or somebody like Black Sheep to keep us accountable and can help us create a plan. I have a team that has buy-in, and we understand it's going to be a consistency around. Let's call it. We're going to dedicate 6 months to this project.
Mm-hmm.
All those hit all the check marks of this would be a successful project.
Yeah, honestly, if you have that crew, you can take off and conquer the world.
What have you seen with some of your clients? Give me kind of a before and after of this is what the business looked before. Then we kind of went in, we helped them with their main systems. Maybe didn't systemize everything, but at least in some of the main systems. And what did the organization look like after?
Sure. I'll use a client here we brought on a couple years back. They found us at about 1,200 doors, if I remember right. And they had basically brute forced their way through growth um, while having enormous churn through regular acquisitions. They just continued buying more and more and more portfolios. And the reason they came to us was ostensibly, hey, we need you to build Lead Simple. But what we discovered was their deeper problem was the business owner continued to acquire without really listening to his operations team. And they all hated him. They hated him because he kept pouring more fuel on the fire without seeing that they were losing business hand over foot and just washing down the drain. So what we did for them initially was we looked at their onboarding, we looked at their sales process, and I had to tell that client, "Hey, you need to stop acquiring businesses for a couple of months while we figure this out." It was a very funny conversation.
So it was sure it
um,
was not an easy one.
but it ended up in a massive win for that company, and they have completely restructured. They were in a portfolio model. They were relying on 40 different team members to handle 1,200 doors, which I know you know this and I know this. That's a lot of people to handle 1,200 doors. You don't need that many people, especially stateside people,
Oh yeah.
right? And they reorganized. They've been able to grow dramatically because they moved to a departmental style of structure. And now they have processes for everything. And their business runs incredibly consistently. And they can actually handle their continual acquisitions because they turn that faucet back on and the company continues to grow and grow and grow.
How I know people don't in NARP don't like hearing door count, but we got to use this for operationally. You and I like talking door count because it just changes your operations, right? 300 doors
Sure.
versus 1,200 doors. In your opinion, how many doors does somebody need to have until they really need like now they need to create a process or they need to have some type of automation? Is there kind of a number that you think like, hey, that's when you start need to look at this seriously? Don't say zero.
It's a good. Can I say one? Yeah. So there's the reality that every business needs documentation and structure. So I think that is the major caveat. Doesn't matter how many doors you have, if you don't have some level of documented processes, you're shooting yourself in the foot. That said, you can get away with it. You can get away without a lot of documentation, probably till about 100, 120 doors, depending on your market. I've seen some companies go up to like 150 and not have meaningful documentation. But you have to remember that the only reason you're getting away with it at that point is that you're relying on really excellent humans. And you are probably, if you're the business owner and you're listening to this, you are probably one of those excellent humans. And there's nothing wrong with being an excellent human. I highly encourage it. Please pursue excellence. But if you are the backbone of your business, you don't have a business. You're just an employee. You are a tool being used by the machine that is not really getting you the outcome that you started that business for. I don't think there's any person I've ever met who decided to start a business because they wanted to work more hours. Just never happened.
And get paid less.
Right? And get paid less. I talked with a gentleman this last week who told me he was working 16-hour days, 6 days a week, and that's just brutal. And he was at about 120 doors, and he had one employee. And like, my friend, I hate to break it to you, but there's more work that has to happen before you can get out of that slump.
Yeah.
You have to build systems in order to escape this other system that you've created. And that's why I encourage people to build and document earlier, before your time is completely sucked away.
That's you know what, that's great advice, because I was working about 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and when we went and started building our processes, those went from 12 to 14, 15-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it was done, I was down to like 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's got to get worse before it gets better. But when it gets better, it's a whole lot better.
And it's better in perpetuity. You get your time back forever. Right?
Yeah.
So I heard you speak at Tony Klein's Onyx retreat a few months ago. And you talked about the process culture, and you talked about the 4 levels of kind of the evolution of a process in a business. Can you share that? And then I want to talk a little bit about how to actually create a process culture, and then we're going to let everybody go. But so talk to me about those 4 levels of, is it the process culture, or the 4 levels of just the levels of process? I forget what
I'd call it 4 levels of process culture. So level number 1 is where most people start the business and candidly often stay for a really long time. And this is going to be your tribal knowledge level. Now, tribal knowledge is so named because everything passes around very verbally, right? Very tribally. It's like a storytelling culture, if you will, right? I know the process and you're the new hire, so I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'll show you what to do, and then you know. And then you are able to carry on the tradition of the knowledge that has been passed to you, right? And in this type of culture, you always have one person who's like, oh, this person, they have all the knowledge. They know all the things.
The oracle.
Right? The oracle. And again, this is not to rag on people who are in this position. It's just like, this is the reality of how the business operates.
I would also say I literally was at that level for a long time. And we would, like, depending on how I felt that day, that's how I'd make decisions sometimes. If I was in a good mood, I'm like, get him back there full security. But if I was in a bad mood, no, fight him to the death, you know? So it's, you can easily, because there's nothing written down, you can easily sway your decision-making, which is not a good thing, especially in property management. All right, so that's level 1. So level 2.
So tribal knowledge is level 1. Level 2 is where you have some documentation. Right? Now, this is good, and I want to describe these levels as progression, right? If you are at one of these levels, great, keep moving forward, right? The little Meet the Robinsons here. Keep moving forward. So our level 2 is documentation. You've got stuff that's written down, right? And that's excellent. Keep on doing that. Now, where you write it down matters, but you can have it written down almost anywhere. You can have sticky notes, you can have whiteboards, you can have spreadsheets, you can have Google Doc. It doesn't matter. It's being captured somewhere. You should do it in one consolidated way, in one organized place, but it's being documented, and that's the important part. When we document it, we create an operational asset, and this allows your business to run consistently. Just like you said, you can take the emotion and still have it, but follow the process, all right? But at this stage, all you have is the documentation. You don't have people really using it. You don't have any kind of enforcement around it. And it's just, this is the very typical binder that's sitting on the shelf everybody cracks open about once a year, maybe.
Yeah. It's like a
All right.
checkbox.
Yeah, very much. Now, level 3, this is where your documentation moves and actually becomes operational. And this is where a lot of companies sit today with the modern technologies that we have. You can take your written documentation and turn it into a process, right? A process that lives in a technology that helps you keep your team accountable, that has deadlines and timelines, all the good things that any business owner would want. It starts forcing some of that accountability. But the key issue at this stage is you're still forcing it, right? We're really only staying accountable to the process because you, as a leader, are there and you're making it happen. Saying, hey guys, come on, let's line up with the process. All right, 3 levels. Here's level 4. Level 4 is process culture. This is where your people, your team, value the processes that you have just as much as getting to the outcome. Where the processes themselves are something that we take joy in, that we improve over time. And when I say we, I mean we, not just you, the business owner.
Right.
Your team is actually looking for opportunity to make their processes better because they care about it that much, because they care about your clients that much. And this is where your employees trust the process fully, where there's no second guessing about whether this is the right thing to do, because there's constant iteration of the process and they have buy-in to the process because they're involved in improving it over time. And
So
where
in this,
building systems and doing documentation is the default, not the exception.
so in this process culture, they're the ones coming to you, the business owner, with ideas on how to update or make changes to the process that would enhance the process.
Yeah, this is like, hey, Pete, I just was doing this process. I was doing move outs and I discovered that X, Y, and Z is true. And I had to do this like 5 times. Why can't we update this in the process and have a better process?
I'm going to give
Like,
you a real world
heck yeah, let's
example of
go.
this, Ben. So at Empire, we were doing lease renewals. We had a process for it. Jessica ran the lease renewal department, and we used to start them at 60 days out. And one day I was meeting with her, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I start them at 90 days out." And I'm like, "What do you mean you start them at 90 days out?" She goes, "Well, I was having challenges with X, Y, and Z, and it was not enough time. So once I just did 90 days out, it solved everything." And so that was somebody who owned the process, saw a challenge,
I love it.
turned around and just change the trigger. And I always tell people, like, if you change a process and it doesn't work, I never get mad at you, because to me that's the process culture. That's ownership,
Mm-hmm.
accountability, responsibility. And so I never get upset. And if I have to write a check, I write a check. You can't change policy, you can change the process, especially if you've taken ownership of it. So we had some of that process culture. Is it can you have some departments have that process culture and some departments be at that level 3?
Oh, heck yeah. Anybody who's ever worked in a big company, especially like, 200 or 300 people company, you can see this easily, right? You can look at, oh, well, sales is super disorganized. Operations is super organized. Accounting, well, they've got their ducks in a row, right? And you can easily point fingers. When you have a smaller company, it's harder though, because everything's a lot more personal. And when you're pointing fingers, oftentimes there's fingers pointing right back at you, right? So I think yes, you can absolutely have levels of organization in some parts and disorganization in others, but in that smaller ecosystem, there's a greater need for that culture. Otherwise, it really just can lead to disunity.
If someone's listening to this and they're like, "Man, I really want to get to that process culture, but I really don't know how." Like, what are some things that you would coach them on creating that process culture in their business?
Great question. I think there's a couple of things that I would start with. Number one, as a person, as an individual, right? Not even thinking about your business, I would start looking to find processes, right? When the next time you go to UPS, look for the process. What are the things that they probably say every single time when every customer walks through the door? What are the actions that they repeat each time? They're always going to grab the sticker. Do they get the sticker from the same place, or does it come from different machines depending on the package, right? Or if you go to the grocery store, again, silly examples here, but think about what's the supply chain that had to exist to put this orange on this display. So starting to kind of get your mind thinking about, all right, what are the processes that need to exist in order for things to happen around me? Because the reality of it is the world is one big system that's made up of 10 billion different processes. The processes support the system, right? You want to be the owner of the system. That's why you're building a business. So you have to take ownership of the processes. So that'd be number one. Number two is I would begin the discipline of documenting your processes. And I would block time on your calendar once a week, have it be the same time every week, and bring in your team to that conversation. And depending on the size of your team, you can bring in all the people or just the key people, you decide, right? But start having the discipline of documenting the processes. And there's easy frameworks for doing this. If you want to talk about it, reach out to me. I would love to take you through that. I don't know if we'll have time to talk through all that today, but begin documenting the process, and that will provide enormous value.
Yeah, I think the main thing though is the process culture starts from the top down, just like any kind of culture does. Any kind of core values starts from the top
Absolutely.
down, and then you need to. I think if you kind of, I don't want to say manipulate the team. That's not the right word. I think you show the team what their life could look like once processes are built. You can show them, hey, you can work less mistakes, less stress, less churn, business grows. I think that helps the buy-in when you kind of show them what life can be once you have some processes, because everybody's gonna have to work a little bit harder for a shorter period of time. Correct, Ben?
For sure. For sure. It's all about sales, right, at this point. And just like when you sell anything, right, there's a little bit of effort involved. Sometimes there's a lot of effort that's involved in order to get to the outcome. But that's true here for your team.
All right, last question I have for you. Which process do you recommend that a property management company starts with?
Yeah, great question. If you are at the very beginning of your documentation journey, I would start at the beginning of your processes, which is going to be your sales process and your onboarding process. That'll give you value day one. Talk through your sales process, write it all down, do the same thing for your onboarding, and that will give you a consistent experience at the most important point of your relationship with your new client, where they really need a consistent experience.
And if they do need they need to be held accountable, or they need some expertise in creating processes, expertise in Lead Simple and Apply, they can give you a call. How would they be able to get in touch with you, Ben?
Yeah, two easy ways. Number one, you can visit our website, which is blacksheepglobal.net, or you can email me directly, benjamin@blacksheepglobal.net. I'd love to talk with you.
Do you have that quiz on your? You have created some awesome quiz. Do you have that on
Oh,
your?
that's
Do
right.
you have it on
It's actually not on our website yet, but we have a.
website? Yeah, not on your website.
Well, maybe we can include that in the show notes. It's called a process culture assessment. We'll include it in the show notes.
Do me a favor.
And
If you're
yeah,
listening to this and you're interested in this, email Ben and just say in the title, just say, send me the quiz, because it's awesome. He did a great job on it. And it takes about 10, 15 minutes, but it'll tell you if where you are on your journey, or what you need, if you need a process architect or not. So I thought it was very cool. So Ben, thanks so much for being here. If you are listening and you're not a NARPA member, like I say every week, shame on you. Give them a call at 800-782-3452, or go to narpum.org. And believe it or not, I had my remote team help me build all my processes. So if you are looking for a remote team, or, hey, I want to build some process, I want to hire some remote team members, shoot me an email, pete@vpmsolutions.com, or just go to vpmsolutions.com. Ben, thanks so much for being here. See you, everybody.
thanks, Pete.